I yield to Senator Huxtable for purposes of Senate Bill 6.
Senator Huxtable.
Thank you, Madam President. I ask that Senate Bill 6 be brought before the Senate for consideration and read by title only.
Mr. Reading Clerk, kindly read in title only Senate Bill number 6.
Senate Bill number 6, sponsored by Senators Huxtable, Representatives Schwarzkopf, Parker Shelby, Harris, Hilofsky, and others. An act to amend Title VII of the Delaware Code and Chapter 108, Volume 62 of the Laws of Delaware, as amended by Chapter 99, Volume 72 of the Laws of Delaware, relating to clarifying the Warner Grant Trust and the jurisdiction of the Court of Chancery as arbiter of disputes regarding the Warner Grant Trust land. Madam President, that concludes the reading of Senate Bill number 6 by title only.
We have before us Senate Bill number 6. Senator Huxtable.
Thank you. That's quite a mouthful on that title, so thank you very much on the reading of that. So in our committee meeting, when we were talking about Senate Bill 6, we had a local historian, former executive director of the Lewis Historical Society, provide some history on the Warner Grant Trust lands and mentioned that it was the second oldest commons in the United States, second to the Boston Commons, and also the largest land grant for public benefit at the time. Problem is, Warner had no heirs, and the city of Lewis became the trustee. And a series of lawsuits regarding the management of the trust were brought forth by citizen lawsuits. It was discharged in the courts, giving the AG's office the right to defend. In further response, in 1979, the General Assembly put forth revised updates. In speaking with some of those involved in that legislation, it was thought that such a proposal, like the restaurant proposed in 2022, would not be offered based on their bill. The intent behind that legislation was to elevate a few guiding principles and stated that the area may not be used for the private benefit to the detriment of the public benefit. To them, this meant that such proposal of a restaurant or even future considerations of water parks, bandstands, or ropes courses, which do exist in other parks, would not be considered. This bill should not be interpreted, though, as an impediment for rehabilitating or enhancing existing facilities, for they are deemed a benefit and in some cases historic. Just to let you know, the fishing pier at that park, a U-boat was surrendered there in World War II. But every once in a while, we find it necessary to revisit and refresh the language of previous bills to reset expectations. That is why we are providing modest but necessary updates to the 1979 legislation that at that time provided the boundaries of the Warner Grant Trust lands moving forward into the future. It also set forth its guiding principles: conservation, public recreation, and nature education. It also stated that the Warner Grant Trust lands may not be used for the private benefit to the detriment of the public benefit. What we are doing right now is affirming our oath of office to always place the public interest above any special or personal interest and respect the right of future generations to share the rich historic and natural heritage of Delaware. Now, we do have a Senate amendment, and at this time, Madam President, I would ask that Senate Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 6 be brought before the Senate for consideration and read by title only.
Sure. Mr. Reading Clerk, kindly read in title only Senate Amendment 1 to Senate Bill number 6.
Senate Amendment number 1 to Senate Bill number 6, sponsored by Senator Huxtable. Madam President, that concludes the reading of Senate Amendment number 1 to Senate Bill number 6 by title only.
Senate Amendment 1 before us for Senate Bill 6.
Thank you. During that committee meeting, we had some conversations and we had some follow-up with state agencies, and we wanted to provide some clarification on the original bill. And that's what Senate Amendment 1 does. We had a line in there which all three of those governing principles needed to exist harmoniously. And because we thought that was sort of confusing, we decided to remove that so people know that not all three uses need to be met in order to be consistent with the guiding principles. We added fishing and birding, specifically called out in public recreation. We further added a grandfather clause to affirm that what's been happening in the park has been okay and consistent with the guiding principles, such as the existing vendors that we have that support public recreation and are deemed a public benefit. Fishing tournaments and sports camps and things of that nature. These things that were existing prior to, we deem to be consistent with the 1979 language and would like to have them continue. We also removed the Attorney General language as it's unnecessary considering the Chancery Court's ruling. If there are no questions on Senate Amendment 1, I would ask for a roll call.
We could kindly call roll, sir, for Senate Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 6.
Senator Brown? Yes. Senator Buxton?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Gay? Yes. Senator Hansen? Yes. Senator Hocker? Yes. Senator Hoffner? Yes. Senator Huxtable?
Yes.
Yes. Senator Lawson? Yes. Senator Lockman? Yes. Senator Mansavinos? Yes. Senator McBride? Yes. Senator Pardee? Yes. Senator Pettyjohn? Yes. Senator Pinckney? Yes. Senator Poore? Yes. Senator Richardson? Yes. Senator Sokola? Yes. Senator Sturgeon? Yes. Senator Townsend? Yes. Senator Walsh? Yes. Senator Wilson? Yes. Madam President, the roll call on Senate Amendment number 1 to Senate Bill number 6, 21 yes.
Having received a required sufficient number of votes, Senate Amendment 1 is now part of Senate Bill 6.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We discussed the Warner Grant trust lands and the amendments, while modest, but also important. If there are no questions, I'd ask that Senate Bill 6.
Senator Pardee has risen.
Thank you, Madam President. I would request open dialogue with the bill sponsor.
We don't have that as a rule, but you can certainly ask him questions and we'll go back and forth. You went back to the House days. You went back to the House. I go there occasionally with you to the House. You will note that, Senator Huxtable.
You know, you think after a few years,
He's agreeing to answer that, but go ahead, Senator Pardee. No, we all go back there, right, Senator Hocker? Those of us who've been there, we occasionally slip home. Senator Pardee.
Thank you, Madam President. I did have just a couple questions to clarify that I wanted to have clarified on the record. And first of all, I wanted to thank Senator Huxtable for bringing this bill forward, but also for being willing to work with me and have a couple conversations and to address some of my concerns through the amendment. And so as I assume most of us in this chamber understand, there is an existing bathhouse facility there. In fact, it is a Senator Dave McBride bathhouse. And it does have some amenities that are part of that facility, which obviously include bathrooms, showers, but also include a small snack bar that does serve hot food. I understand hamburgers, hot dogs, French fries, that sort of thing, as well as does kayak rentals. And those types of amenities are very much enjoyed and appreciated by my constituents who, when they want to go to the beach, are going to drive an hour down and need some place to park and to shower up and change their children, et cetera. So, my questions are, and you kind of addressed this when you discussed the amendment, but as amended, the current operations of the bathhouse, the snack bar, the kayak rentals, those will not be affected. Is that correct?
Yes. So they were consistent with the 1979 language. They remain consistent with this language.
Okay. And I was just concerned that, and this had been brought to my attention that this new language with the legislation itself could open the door for potential lawsuits that might stop the operation of the current bathhouse, and again the kayak rentals, the small concession stand, and you feel pretty confident that this bill as amended is not going to open the door for lawsuits against NREC that would seek to potentially shut down the current operations status quo.
Senator Huxtable?
Yes, correct. As mentioned, this bill should not be interpreted as an impediment for rehabilitating existing facilities which are deemed a public benefit.
Right. Yeah.
The three guiding principles.
Senator Pardee?
Thank you, Madam President. And that was one of the, I guess, one of the concerns that DENREC had brought up during the, I believe it was during the committee hearings, that the current bathhouse facility is really in need of serious repair or replacement. And the decision is at some point to move forward, whether it's in the next year, next 5 years, maybe 10 years from now, to replace the existing bathhouse. You feel pretty confident that that can be done without, without the complete removal, let's say, of those types of amenities and facilities.
Thank you, Madam President.
See, he's getting you into bad habits. Senator Huxtable, go ahead.
Not only do we find it consistent to have these amenities, but I would also fully support the rehabilitation of the McBride bathhouse and would be helpful in that cause.
All right.
Senator Pardee?
Madam President, and then just a couple more, I swear. So I did receive a call yesterday from the Delaware mobile surf fishermen, and one of the concerns that was expressed to me is that once this bill is passed, that they're concerned that, again, there could be a lawsuit brought that would seek to stop their use of the beach and stop the use of four-wheel drive vehicles on the beach for the purpose of going surf fishing. And again, I just wanted some comfort in knowing that practice, which I personally enjoy. I've always had a surf tag for my vehicle and love to get down there and do that. And I just want to feel good knowing that this legislation isn't going to somehow open the door to shut down those types of activities.
Senator Huxtable?
They were deemed consistent with the 1979 language. They would further still be consistent with our modest changes that we made in this bill. So,
okay.
But to also address that point, that is why we actually added the Senate Amendment 1 to make sure that they knew that they were existing before they're good. And then we added the fishing as part of the public recreation just to assure those folks who, like myself, have a beach tag and would still be able to continue that same use.
Senator Pardee?
And I believe this is my last one, Madam President, and that is one of the issues that was raised by the Department of Natural Resources is the potential need to erect some type of cell phone tower on the property, and that there is a necessity in terms of first responders, being able to get paramedics in there if necessary. And so I'd like the bill sponsor to, again, just make me feel a little bit more confident that if it is determined that there is a need for a cell phone tower or other facilities that would make it easier for first responders to communicate, that's not going to run into some sort of, legal challenge that could end up impacting, response times in the park.
Yeah, that would. Thank you again. That would certainly be a public benefit to be able to have first responders be able to adequately address the concerns of the folks using that park.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. I have no further questions. And again, I want to commend the bill sponsor for bringing forth this legislation and for addressing many of my concerns and concerns of the committee through the amendment. Thank you.
We have, in this order, I have three senators who had risen. Senator Lawson, followed by Senator Gay, followed by Senator Patty John. Senator Lawson.
Thank you, ma'am. If I may, I'd like to call a witness and have DENREC speak to their concerns, if that's permissible.
Personal privilege is always granted to a senator if that's what you're requesting. Yes.
I request that. Thank you.
And who would you call?
Ray Bivens, come to the front, please.
Department of Natural Resources, Mr. Bivens. Good afternoon, sir. You know the drill. Not everyone listening in knows who you are, so for the records, give your name and title, please.
Raymond Bivens, Director of Delaware State Parks.
Okay, go ahead, Senator Lawson.
You have some concerns over this bill. Could you please tell us what they are?
Thanks for this opportunity to speak. As State Parks Director, I'm the person that's charged as steward of the state-owned Warner land grants. And I have the tremendous appreciation for how meaningful and important that these are, going back 20 years when I served as the chief naturalist for Delaware State Parks. I can tell you with complete certainty, and I don't say this out of turn because I've had this conversation with Senator Huxtable, that as this bill is written, things wouldn't happen in the park. That is, if this bill would have been in place when I started as director, there would be no Gordon's Pond Trail, for example, that connects Herring Point to Gordon's Pond. Line 120 of the bill states the preeminent goal is the conservation and preservation. Well, parks can sometimes be a tough business because what's best for the people in access and accessibility is not always what's best for the resource. And we did build that through wetlands, but we did it with the best practices at hand. It's important that each senator, as you vote on this bill, have a full understanding of the Warner land grant. For example, how many of you know that the Lewis Dairy Queen is built on Warner land? It is. The reason your body had to act back in, I believe, 1979, July 5th, was that Lewis was taking advantage of the Warner land grant. Land was being leased off that led to a milk of magnesia plant, that led to residential developments, created lots of problems. For example, this bill doesn't protect the original land that is still under Lewis's control, such as Lewis Beach. It only applies to the state park land. So what that language said is that the people of Sussex County, of Lewis, while we were still part of Pennsylvania, could come, they could gather beach plums, they could cut trees, they could graze their sheep. And then the General Assembly took that farther, and they said it should be built around public recreation, should be built around nature education, and conservation, which I very much appreciate the language coming out right away, because they conflict with each other often. There's no doubt about that. The restaurant project never even finished the environmental review and cultural resources review, and it was stopped through a public process, which I'm really proud, and I think our award-winning park system does an outstanding job of gathering public input. We've done that for 72 years. I do think this is not just about a restaurant or a hotel or an entertainment center, because a substitute bill was submitted that did not apparently go far enough in that area. I think this could be covered in a one-page bill as opposed to a seven-page bill that totally redefines and that leaves a lot of interpretation and judgment, could stop capital projects and other problems. I've heard in public meetings what some people, a small group of people, would like to see. And it's more than just no bandstand at Cape Henlopen like Bellevue or White Clay has. It's no pavement in the main Cape Beach parking lot. They would like it returned to gravel. It's no snack bar whatsoever. It's less people coming to the park. Our state park staff is challenged with doing what's best by the resource as stewards for the long term and providing that public access. It's an ugly, messy business that is difficult at times. And there's no park beloved more than Cape Henlopen. So I would encourage you to pass a one-page simple bill that stops a hotel, that stops a restaurant, but doesn't leave to reinterpretation the Warner land grant. Thank you.
Senator Sokola.
Thank you, Madam President. To the witness, if this bill passes, what prevents you from bringing us a one-page bill next year?
Well, if this bill passes, I will tell you there's no way that we could put a cell tower in the park. I would disagree because what I just read you.
That's not the answer to my question. If this passes, what prevents you from proposing a one-page bill to this body? We've done things and undone things before. This bill was introduced on May 10th. That's a month ago. So what would prevent you from bringing a one-page bill next year?
The Warner land grant would already be reinterpreted and changed in very significant ways. If this is really about a restaurant, a hotel, let's do that. I'm all about that.
I think it's about more than a restaurant and a hotel.
I agree.
And I think it's important that we talk about what it's really about. But you know, the process started long before May 10th. The bill was introduced on May 10th, and we're learning today that maybe we could have done something with a one-page bill. I'm not satisfied with that from the department.
Okay, and in the order, Senator Gay, I know you had risen prior. Do you have a comment for the witness? No. Okay. For the witness, Senator Buxton? Yes, go ahead.
So, and I know that Secretary Garvin was at the committee hearing. In fact, I was struck by and then asked the sponsor about the conversation because the secretary, in my words, my paraphrasing, said, we don't know much about this. Kind of don't agree with this thing. We can do this. We just need to do it better. We'd like to work with you. In fact, I sent a message to the sponsor saying, did DENREC's amendments make it to your desk? So that's my question. Did you offer amendments where they responded to?
We did offer amendments, and some of them have been included by Senator Huxtable.
Okay. Yeah, I assumed when I saw the amendments, those are the ones we're talking about. My understanding is now maybe not all of the amendments are DENREC-initiated amendments, but some of them made it through.
There are some key ones. There's no doubt about that. I would also add that there's multiple layers of public process, including our governor's appointed Parks Advisory Council, which hasn't, I've had several members reach out to me about this. This bill was introduced after they had their last public meeting and before they'll have their next one. It could be, that's not until July.
Because the take I had, what I was struck by, and this is relevant, I supported constituents in that area who reached out to me. On its surface, it made sense until the secretary showed up and said, this isn't a very effective process. We're the agency challenged with this. Maybe we got it wrong based on public comments, but we're here now to fix this. And it feels like, your offer hasn't been fully kind of asked or answered, I guess. So
I can't speak to that, but I will say that everything we do goes through a public process. And we were still in the process going through it to see if it was even, no one's ever going to, DENREC's never going to allow a restaurant to be built on dunes. There's no doubt about it. But we were going through a process to see if there was a site and if it was possible. That's cultural resources, that's natural resources, just like we did with the Gordon's Pond Trail. And we found a way that it was sustainable and in the best interest of the public recreation.
What I do know, and then I'll end with this one, is the process you speak of when you show up and say, we're really not sure of the bill, I agreed to. The public process that led us here, I don't think was very effective at all. We talked about having a meeting at Killen's Pond to address a park potentially in Lewis, Delaware. That's I get it, they're state parks, but the reality is it's a local park or it's a local kind of impact. Again, that's not for comment. Thank you.
I ask
Senator
the
Lawson,
witness
of
to be
your witness?
excused if there's no further questions.
Witness is excused.
Thank you.
Senator Gay and then Senator Pettyjohn. Senator Gay?
Thank you, Madam President. I actually heard a lot about this bill from my constituents who happen to live very far away from the park, but also enjoy the rich historic and natural resources of our state, no matter which county they're in. I also heard from the advisory board members, which I think were mentioned, and I asked them about their concerns. The great thing about our process and our public process and our deliberative process is that it doesn't just happen on the floor of the Senate. It happens in so many places where we bring stakeholders in, we have email conversations, in-person conversations, we travel to different counties, and sometimes we stay put on Zoom. But the great part about this is that when there is a potential issue and there are questions to be asked, we make ourselves available to have those conversations that are needed. And that's exactly what Senator Huxtable did. And he spent ample time with me addressing my constituents' concerns, explaining the amendment to me, and helping me understand how the work that we're doing today underpins the initial intent of the grant and continues to develop this land and this code for the future and for future generations to enjoy this. And so while there may be disagreements about exactly what prohibitions or exclusionary phrases or what have you, I believe that Senator Huxtable is expertly representing the interests of his district and his community, and as members of my community appreciate that work, I'm standing today to support him. I also want to commend Senator Huxtable for being an excellent deposition witness and sticking to his guns when asked multiple legal questions. I will offer to represent you in a deposition any day, sir. You're excellent. And so I do think we need to be very cognizant of what we are doing today. We are not providing guarantees. In fact, the work of this body failed to prevent guarantees in the past. We cannot say that a court would not rule one way or the other, but we can stand here today and say what we hope they will do. We can stand here today and make sure that our language is tight and that our intent is clear, and we'll see in another 30 or 40 years if we need to come back. But I appreciate the work that's been done, and I'm really looking forward to voting yes on this bill.
Senator Huxtable. Oh, Senator Pettyjohn had canceled.
Roll
He
call,
gave me the
please.
signal. All right. If we could kindly have roll on Senate Bill 6 as amended with Senate Amendment 1, please.
Senator Brown. Yes. Senator Buxton.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Gay. Yes. Senator Hansen.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Hawker. Yes. Senator Hoffner. Yes. Senator Huxtable.
Yes.
Yes. Senator Lawson. Yes. Senator Lockman. Yes. Senator Mansavinos. Yes. Senator McBride. Yes. Senator Pardee. Yes. Senator Pettyjohn. Yes. Senator Pinckney. Yes. Senator Poore. Yes. Senator Richardson. Yes. Senator Sokola. Yes. Senator Sturgeon. Yes. Senator Townsend. Yes. Senator Walsh. Yes. Senator Wilson. Yes. Madam President, the roll call on Senate Bill number 6 as amended by Senate Amendment number 1, 21 yes.
Having received the required and sufficient number of votes, Senate Bill 6 as amended passed the Senate. Whoops. All right, we won't. No. We appreciate enthusiasm from the Senate. However, we do ask that we keep